3 goals per game during the streak. Again, Nashville, without Roman Josi, their captain, which opens up a lot of value on defense with PK Subban. Ryan Ellis, Matthias Ekholm, you're going to want to look at those guys. Philip Forsberg, Ryan Johansson on that top line with Victor Arvidsson. Again, solid stack, but keep in mind their second line with Ryan Hartman, Kyle Turris, and Craig Smith. None of them are over 6,000, so you're going to be able to get a nice value there. And again, it's a great matchup. The Ducks, on the other hand, 16 goals in 3 games and on their 3-game winning streak. Their top line of Ryan Getzlaf, Rickard Rakell, and Corey Perry has combined for 9 goals and 14 assists in their last 5 games. But again, bad blood. Keep an eye on Ryan Kessler. Ryan Kessler and Ryan
knows how
Johansson
to get under the skin a little
got
bit.
a little chippy in last year's playoff series. Kessler's very cheap. I think he's $3,900. So definitely a guy to keep in mind when you're making your lineups.
Yeah, he'll be on the ice too. Shorthanded, maybe get you a special teams point there
Right.
as well. Pete, what about you? What game are you looking at tonight?
Yeah, that's a great game that Ben mentioned. My only worry with that game is that you're running into 2 of the hottest goalies in the league and 2 of the the deepest defenses in the league. So that's my one concern with that game. Now, my top game is kind of off the grid a little bit. You might not be flocking to this game like you're flocking to the Nashville-Anaheim game or the Patrick Laine versus Taylor Hall game, but I like the Ottawa Senators at home against the Buffalo Sabres, who will be on the second end of a back-to-back after being blown out on Wednesday. And these are not good defensive teams. These are teams that are both playing very well offensively. For whatever reason, Buffalo's playing very well, at least their top line and Ristolainen with Ryan O'Reilly, Ristolainen, and also Sam Reinhart. Those guys are playing very close to a point per game since Jack Eichel got injured. Again, it might be very telling. I don't really understand why, but you can make the case those guys have been stepping up to the plate and in expanded roles, which is a good sign for Buffalo moving forward. And then Ottawa, Mark Stone is well better than a point per game at home this season. Erik Karlsson, you look at his home splits compared to the road, pretty stark contrast. And then there's some value picks sprinkled in. John Gabriel Pajot is centering the top line with Stone. He's only 3,400. I would put him in any lineup I'm playing tonight because he's playing first line and also on the top power play unit with Stone, Karlsson, Mike Hoffman, Matt Duchene. And as we get to the pick'em, there's a lot of great options for Ottawa. So this is the case of maybe an irrelevant game in the playoff picture being very fantasy relevant on this particular night, I think.
Yeah, it's relevant when it comes to the lottery and where those teams are looking. And you mentioned Buffalo on a second of a back-to-back. Lost 5-0 also in that game last night, too. So definitely not on the upswing. I was curious, just talking a little bit more about narratives. You mentioned, the Western Conference Finals rematch. We have a lot of narratives on this 12-game slate. You got the Lightning and Rangers, two teams that just had, a pretty big blockbuster trade. I know Pete's going to talk a little bit more about one side of that matchup. You got Thomas Tatar making his return to Detroit with the Vegas Golden Knights, and as I already mentioned, kind of Ovechkin 2 goals away from 600 in his career. So Ben, are you looking a lot at narratives tonight, or do you try to kind of phase those out of your mind a little bit?
You know me, I'm a big narrative guy, so
big narrative guy.
I think you have to consider them in this slate, especially Tatar going back to Detroit with the Vegas Golden Knights. Again, we mentioned Riley Smith is out tonight, so Tatar is going to be skating on the first line with Jonathan Marchessault and William Karlsson, so he's in a very good spot. I believe he's 4,300 on the slate. So he's a guy that you're going to want to look to in a narrative spot that's going to be a value. Obviously, the Rangers Lightning playing for the first time. You're not going to see Ryan McDonough tonight, but you're still going to get JT Miller and Vladislav Nemestikov are going to be playing each other. I'm sure they'll be hungry. So, again, you kind of have to take into consideration, but don't go too crazy when considering narratives.
No bobblehead nights?
No bobblehead nights in hockey. Maybe in the NBA we can do some of that stuff. But hockey, we'll keep it a little clean cut.
I'm always here for the narratives. There's always one angle you can find. We're going to move on now, though. It is time for a new segment here, second episode. We're already bringing out new segments. And we're going to dive now into our player-specific discussions. It's only right, then, that we start with the opening face-off. So first, going to look at 2 high-priced centers. You probably can't fit both of these guys into your lineups unless you're going extreme value elsewhere. We got Connor McDavid, 8,100. most expensive player, non-goalie on the slate. He's at home against the Islanders, plum matchup there. And then Steven Stamkos, a little bit cheaper, $7,400 at home against the Rangers, like we said. Pete, we're going to start with you. Out of these two pivots, who are you leaning toward?
I'm leaning toward McDavid. I would get him into my lineup. I normally don't spend up for Connor McDavid, or I wouldn't always advise to, but this is a slam dunk matchup. The Islanders have gone off the rails in recent games. They're on a long losing streak. I know there's the Jordan Eberle, Ryan Strome narrative, but I really think this could be a game where Connor McDavid drops 4 or 5 points. I just get the feeling because McDavid, they present a matchup nightmare to the Islanders, who are starting Christopher Gibson in net instead of Halak. So that's a right matchup there. And then you just look at how the Islanders have performed defensively over the second half of the season has been pretty abysmal. So I like McDavid regardless of his line mates. It's pretty amazing that the Oilers have gone from contenders to non-contenders in one season, but McDavid's points per game average is nearly identical. So you can trust him in this favorable matchup against the Islanders at home while they're on their road trip.
All right, so Ben, Pete kind of mentioned it there. You are paying up, though. You're paying $8,100.
Right.
Do you like him, or are you going down to Stamkos?
I'm going to go down to Stamkos for a couple reasons. McDavid, to me, seems like that high ceiling guy, but again, you don't want to pay that much. You're going to want to look at Stamkos. He's cheaper. He's nearly a point per game against the Rangers in his career, 24 points in 25 games. The Rangers are thin down the middle. Again, you're paying down for Stamkos, but you're also getting that high ceiling. So it's like, you're definitely going to want to go that way. The Rangers have been killed at even strength, so you're not going to be relying so much on Stamkos to produce on the power play. And I just think he has a higher floor than McDavid, given his line mates in Kucherov and Johnson.
Yeah, Kucherov up there in price as well. I think I would lean a little bit more toward McDavid, though. I like Pete's argument about he's really the only one on that team who is producing, whereas Stamkos, call it a blessing in real life, maybe a curse in fantasy. There's so many other guys on this team, not even on that line, that can do the damage. Let's move now to the wing, though. We got to talk about really the two hottest players in the league. They were on our thumbnail when we opened the show. They're also playing each other tonight, which just adds a little bit more of that hot sauce to this matchup. Patrick Laine of the Winnipeg Jets, $7,300. He has 7 goals, 7 in his last 3 games. And then Taylor Hall on the other side, all he does is just pick up points. $7,500, so $200 more, but 26 straight games with a point. Ben, start us off here.
I'm going to go with Hall, and it's not the New Jersey bias here. So I'm going to break down the point streak a little bit. 26 straight games with a point. He has 18 goals, 20 assists during that stretch. Past 19 games, that's his point streak, 13 goals, 13 assists during that stretch. The big thing with Hall is the Devils, they rely on him for pretty much all their offense. So it's not like you need to stack Hall with guys like Nico Hischier, with Kyle Palmieri, with some of the guys on their power play, Sami Vatanen. So you can pretty much just plug Hall into your lineup as that upper tier wing that you don't have to pay too much for, but he's going to be reliable. So very good in cash games. And again, Laine, so hot right now, so hot. He's probably going to have a very, very high ownership. So again, you're sort of going off the grain a bit with Hall, but you're still getting a lot of that upside. And like I mentioned before, Mark Scheifele won't be playing. So you get an easier matchup for Hall on that top line because he's out.
A little bit of news here just to get to quickly. Michael Hutchinson of the Jets was supposed to fly into New Jersey to be the backup goalie for the Jets tonight. His flight was actually delayed. So the Jets have had to sign Zane Kalemba, who last played in the USHL, to a part-time offer just so he can be the backup tonight. So something else to think about there maybe with Taylor Hall.
Yeah, a little bit.
Pete, what do you think? Are you just going to ride this Patrick Laine goal streak that's been going on?
Yeah, I'm riding the train. I mean, he's been, over his last 3 games, he's gotten an average of 10-plus DraftKings points, which is really tough to replicate when you look at streaks all around the league, over a 3-game span. And even if you go to his past 9 games, 8 multi-point games, 9-game point streak, he's shooting 50%. 50%. It's like, this is not basketball. This is hockey. How does that happen? This guy, he defies the shooting percentages. He did it as a rookie. We thought he might regress. and he's doing it again as a sophomore. So Patrick Laine with Paul Stastny and Nikolai Ehlers, you would expect that line to remain intact, and maybe the Jets either elevate Brian Little to center of the line with Blake Wheeler, or they could conveniently switch Blake Wheeler back to center where he played earlier in the season when Scheifele missed a large chunk of time. So I think the Jets will be just fine on the road. Impressive team from top to bottom, even with some of their injuries right now. But I just am baffled by how good Patrick Laine is. And I think in DraftKings, you almost need to invest in him. You could, I know you're spending up, but you almost need to invest in him to keep up with the pace. I mean, because you mentioned the high ownership, but what if he gets you another 10-point game? Then you're pretty much everybody who doesn't have him will be, looking up to him. So that's kind of my take on Laine at this point in time.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, the MVP race this year is absolutely wide open, and you have to put both of these guys in the discussion for teams that weren't expecting really to be in the playoff picture going forward this year, and now they're both in the playoff, if not cup contenders, certainly with the moves that they made at the deadline as well, and prior to that with Vatanen. Let's move now, though, to our Pick'em section. It's everyone's favorite section here, talking about Pick'em.
Pick'em.
Always a lot of fun because you just throw out the numbers, well, the salary numbers at the very least. A reminder, if you are new to DFS hockey, Pick'em, it's just a great introduction to the sport. 6 tiers tonight. We're going to be focusing on tiers 2 and tiers 5. Let's start with tier 2 here. We have 3 centers, Alex Barkov of the Panthers, Steven Stamkos, who we touched on a little bit, and then John Tavares in the other side of that Islanders-Oilers matchup. You got a winger, Jonathan Marchessault of the Vegas Golden Knights, and then a defenseman, San Jose's Brent Burns. If you're playing classic mode, he's almost $2,000 more than any other defenseman, but he's here in tier 2 in Pick'em. So Ben, who do you like in tier 2?
I like Alexander Barkov. For one, he's kind of getting overshadowed because of Laine and Hall, but he's been almost as hot as Laine. 7-game point streak, 5 goals, 7 assists. He's almost a guarantee to get you around 3 to 4 shots on goal, so that it obviously increases his floor. Great matchup against the Canadiens at home. Expect a lot of goals from the Panthers and expect Barkov to be in on a lot of them.
All right, Pete, what about you, tier 2?
Yeah, I'm looking at the potential, just the name value of these guys, and I think Jonathan Marchessault deserves a little bit more attention than what he's gotten in terms of season-long leagues and also DFS. I mean, this guy is 33 points in 33 games on the road. I know that some of the name value might scare people away from him, and also the fact that Riley Smith is out of the lineup, his trusted line mate, but he also still has William Karlsson on his line, and he has Thomas Tatar, as Ben mentioned earlier. So I think that line could be just fine on the road, favorable spot against Jimmy Howard and the Detroit Red Wings, who are a non-contender. Marchessault, I think, just deserves a lot more respect in fantasy circles, and I would look to him probably to have the lowest ownership of these players, and certainly has a very high ceiling any given night.
Yeah, former teammates there in Sunrise, Marchessault and Barkov. Let's move now to Tier 5, though. Right. 8 names you will see there in Tier 5. It allows you to stack some of the guys in Tier 2 if you wanted. The 5 that we have, in Tier 5, the names that we have here, Ryan Getzlaf, John Carlson, Erik Karlsson, Logan Couture, Evgeny Dadonov, who you could stack with Barkov potentially, Philip Forsberg, Josh Bailey if you want to pair him with Tavares, and then Jeff Carter of the Kings. So Pete, right back to you. Tier 5, who you like?
Yeah, I mentioned I like the Senators. I like those stacking options in tiers 4 through 6, with Karlsson being in tier 5. But certainly I think it's good to differentiate your lineup a little bit, and I would look against the grain here. I mean, Ryan Getzlaf, even though he's been hot, this is a daunting matchup on the road against Pecorine and the Nashville Predators. But you look at his playoff track record against the Nashville Predators, and also his regular season track record. In the regular season, 40 points in 36 games. He should be up to the task on the road, and I think he should return value and could have another multi-point game. He's had a bunch lately, 4 of his past 5, and he's really clicking on that top line with Rickard Rakell and Corey Perry. So I think that, a lot of people look at Nashville as this ultimate team right now. I think all winning streaks come to an end, and I think Anaheim has some against the grain value here So I'm going with Getzlaf.
Yeah, any given Thursday, right? I think that's
Yeah.
the way the saying goes. Now, Ben, Pete mentioned a potential stack there. When we had our show last week, you brought up a wild stack in Pick'em that just went absolutely bonkers. I'm not asking you to maybe do that again, but who do you like potentially stacking in Pick'em tonight?
So real quick, I disagree with Pete with Getzlaf. I think he's going to be a little on the higher ownership side. I'm going with Logan Couture of the San Jose Sharks. I think he's your pivot for Pick'em GPPs. He'll likely get overlooked again. Getzlaf is a guy who's going to be high ownership. Erik Karlsson's in that tier too. Philip Forsberg's in that tier. I think those are the top guys there. Couture's playing big minutes for the Sharks. Again, 18 points in 25 career games against the Blues, who have allowed 15 goals in their past 3 road games. So I think you should look to Couture. You can, again, stack him with Brent Burns in tier 2. They're both on the power play. You get Pavelski and Kane, who are in tier 3, I believe. So you have some options there to stack. I think that's a decent off-the-grain stack.
Yeah, I think Burns in tier 2 is great savings if compared to classic mode, where, like I said, he's $7,200. The next most expensive defenseman is $65. So probably not really on your radar in classic mode, but you can still get some exposure to him there and pick him. Let's do a quick reset here on the news. We'll hit up a couple of your questions. We got a couple in the queue, but continue to get those in. Like I said, we'll talk season long. We'll talk tonight. We'll talk life advice, who knows? We'll talk about anything, I think, here on this show. Hockey, though, mostly. So quick recap on the hockey news that we're looking at here. David Back is suspended. He will not be in the lineup. Franz Nielsen of the Red Wings, the hit that resulted in Back's suspension, he's out. Mark Scheifele not in tonight. Roman Josi missing, I believe it's his 4th straight game. Brock Besser is going to be out potentially for the rest of the season for Vancouver. Max Pacioretty doesn't look that good for him either. Charlie McAvoy for Boston. And then Riley Smith, the guy we touched on a couple times for Vegas. Those guys are out tonight. So you're going to get some new lines. You're going to get some new power play units as well. Line rushes should be coming in about 10-15 minutes for the 7 o'clock games as those guys hit the ice. We'll get you that new information as we come through. Of course, you kind of throughout the day can see a little bit in terms of morning skates and how those are turning out. Tuukka Rask is back in net for the Bruins as well tonight against the Flyers, a team that Rask shut out the last time that he faced them. We already mentioned Flyers also coming in on a back-to-back. All of the goalie information for tonight, you can see it right there in the sidebar as we cycle through. That update's live. We have people who actually are just sitting there watching, hitting the refresh button on Twitter.
They got you covered.
Waiting to see what the new goalie confirmations are, so those will update as we go. But let's get to your questions, couple that we do have right off the bat. The first one comes from Mike Rezka. Oh, we got the name here. Korpisalo or Rinne tonight in a GPP. Ben, as your goalie, who do you like there?
I like Korpisalo in GPP. He's coming off a good win against the Vegas Golden Knights. 37 saves, 9.4 DK points. So I'm definitely looking at him. He's a little cheaper than Pekka Rinne. Rinne, again, at home, probably you got that winning streak going, so there's a little bit of a narrative. But, again, Predators, Ducks could be very high scoring. So, again, you kind of want to lean against that. I think Blue Jackets play a pretty tight game. Avalanche are a tough matchup, but the Blue Jackets are at home. I think Torts gets them prepared for that game, and I think Korpisalo steps up because he knows Sergei Bobrovsky is right in the rear window, ready to come back from that illness he was dealing with.
Yeah, $7,700 is the price there on Korpisalo. You have to pay up $8,200 for Pekka Rinne. Pete, if you were looking at those two, would you pay up for Rinne?
I would probably lean and agree with Ben. I think Korpisalo has been lights out at home this season, and I think this is a must-win. Florida is really creeping up on the Blue Jackets. They need this game at home. The Avalanche have been much better at home, so a little bit of a shaky option on the road. So I'd go Korpisalo. I'd save $500 in DraftKings and spend it elsewhere.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. Next question we have is from a friend of the show, Adam Kaufman. Riley Nash on the Bees top line with the nose-face killer, a.k.a. Brad Marchand. Do we like Riley Nash again? His price has gone up. I mean, it was $3,500 on last Tuesday when he first took that role. It's up now into the $5K range. Do you still consider that value, Ben? Do you still like Riley Nash?
I do still like Riley Nash, and I'm going to get into him a little bit more with that line with Marchand and Pasternak a little bit later. So, yeah, Riley Nash, still $5,600, so you're getting him at a value. We mentioned the Flyers are on the second of a back-to-back. They're on the road. Alex Lyon is in net for the Flyers. Probably a guy you've never heard of. Not very great goaltender. Nothing against him. But again, this top line for the Bruins has been on fire. So I'm definitely riding Riley Nash tonight.
Yeah. And Alex here would be lying if he said that wasn't a good play.
Uh-oh.
Just had to. Pete, how about you? Do you like that Bruins stack, maybe that first line or that power play?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think there's also some great other value center options from Peugeot from Ottawa, who I mentioned earlier, Brian Little, I believe $4,000, so, and Peugeot $3,400. So there's other great options out there, but it really depends on the rest of your lineup. I mean, if you want to get something in on the Bruins and get a little exposure and just roster him on his own, I don't think it's a bad play at all. It really depends on the rest of your lineup. I would not go too heavy on the Bruins because they're missing a couple of key players and they may rotate their lineup around a little bit. But that said, Riley Nash, pretty solid option given the price.
All right, our last question here is actually a little bit more of a declarative statement here. It comes from Chris Hook, says, with Scheifele out, watch for value plays of Jets guys moving up into the top two lines. 3 exclamation points. He's really excited. I know we talked a little bit about Little there at $4,000. Pete, is there anyone else maybe in your mind who might step up in Winnipeg?
I mean, Kyle Connor could certainly step up. I mean, he's in the middle range in price, and his, he will likely retain that exposure to Blake Wheeler on the top line. So I could see him. I saw him in person the other day. He looked really good defensively, really sound offensively as well, and a number of guys on that Jets team forward group. I mean, Matthew Perreault's been in a slump. He could play center or wing. He has in the past. So just another candidate to potentially step up and have low ownership, especially in Perreault's case, because he's kind of gone off the radar a little bit these past couple of weeks.
Anyone, Ben, that really, I know we talked a little bit about Jack Roslovic also as a guy. I mean, he's $3,000.
Yes,
so if he gets you anything, that's bringing back value right off the bat.
Yeah, I like Roslovic. He's also on the second power play. I think that's a promotion a little bit because Scheifele's out. A guy, again, we've sort of talked about him before, Paul Stastny, who came over from the Blues. He's still with Laine and Ehlers at even strength, but he's moved into the first power play unit in place of Scheifele. So now, not only is he at even strength with Laine, but he's on the power play with Laine. So,
anytime you can be next to a guy who scored 7 goals in 3 games and you don't have to pay up in the 7K range, you got Stastny at $5,700.
Exactly.
That's good exposure that you can still save some money and you still get potentially at least the assists. Laine's not much of a passer, but at least you get some assists.
When you have a shot like Laine, you're not going to do a lot of passing.
Yeah, he's the guy you don't have to yell shot, shoot when he gets the puck. He probably has already put it into the back of the net.
Exactly.
Let's move on now, though. Talk a little bit more classic mode. Get to some of our positional spotlights. We'll start with goalie. We touched on a couple of guys, but we also have each of these guys looked at your top of the line goalie, but then also maybe some value, maybe an off the board type GPP. We're going to kick it out to Pete first, who, if you'll remember from the last show, called Ben Bishop, who went out to have a shutout, got hurt after that, but that's all right. Got the shutout that night. Pete, who is your top backstop for tonight?
My top guy is Andrei Vasilevsky. He's been the shutout king this season. Bishop close behind, but Vasilevsky has been outstanding, getting fantasy owners in all formats that extra bonus. I think that he has a very high probability of a shutout tonight against the Rangers with how their offense has been up and down, and just the narrative of so many former Rangers playing on the Lightning right now. I know he's getting pretty tired. That's kind of been the rumbling right now, and he's given up 10 goals over his past 2 games. But still, I trust the matchup. I will spend up for this matchup, and I would stack him with a couple other bolts tonight at home against the Rangers, who are in rebuilding mode.
All right, going big on the bolts there tonight. Ben, if you're paying up, if you're going for your high-end goalie, who's your lock?
It's got to be Roberto Luongo at home against the Canadiens.
Bobby Lou.
Yes, Strombone 8-2-1 in Sunrise. He's got a 9.30 save percentage. That's 6.2 fantasy points per game at home. Obviously, great matchup against Montreal. They were just beaten up by the Devils in New Jersey. They got to go all the way down to Florida. Montreal's lost 10 of their past 13 games. Again, high floor with Luongo. The Panthers allow 34.6 shots per game. So he's almost a shoo-in to get around 30 saves. And even if he lets in a couple of goals, you're still high probability to get a win. So you get that 30-save combo, you get a win, you're looking at around 5 or 6 points. That's what you're paying up for.
Yeah, and so much of that, when you're picking your goalie, is the win bonus as well. If you're talking about a cash game where you just need that maybe safer floor, that's where you want to get that win. But let's talk a little bit about maybe a GPP type option. Maybe he's more of a value play. Likelihood he'll see shots. Maybe he can eke out a win as well. Pete, let's go out to you. Who's kind of your off-the-board goalie tonight?
I mean, to me, it's off the board just because of his price and because it's a tough road matchup. But I really like Anaheim's appeal, and I think John Gibson is right there with Rinne among the hottest goalies in the entire league. 6-0-0 in his past 6 with a 9.57 and 1 shutout. He's been solid on the road this season. He's 7,300. You compare him to guys like Rask and even Vasilevsky, who I mentioned, and Luongo, you could save $1,000 and you could still invest in a goaltending duo that could very well be a coin flip, even though they're on the road, Gibson versus Rinne. I like Gibson's chances of returning value, even in a loss in this game. And certainly I think he has a chance to pull out the win, which could really help you set yourself apart from the pack in a larger contest.
All right, Ben, what about you?
All right, JF Berube at home versus the Hurricanes, Blackhawks goalie. He's coming off a big 33-save performance in a win against the Avalanche on Tuesday. Obviously a small sample size, but in 2 games at the United Center this season, Berube has allowed 2 goals on 77 shots, so pretty good. Carolina has lost 8 of 10 again. You got Scott Darling, former Blackhawks, starting for the Hurricanes. A little bit of a narrative there, but Darling hasn't played well at all, and the Blackhawks know him pretty well, so I like Berube to return value at 7,500.
And Darling hasn't exactly taken over that number 1 job like they wanted. They still have to trot Cam
Ward, baby.
The carcass of Cam Ward, back out there.
Still kicking.
Want to hit on one comment we did get. Someone had asked if this show's only on Thursdays or is it every day or something like that. We wish it was every day.
If only it could be every day.
Follow these guys on Twitter. We'll flash their lower thirds. They're always talking hockey. This show, though, will be on Thursdays from now until the end of the regular season. You can catch it here on Facebook Live, on DK Live app, as well as on YouTube as well. We're going to move to our next spotlight, though, our next positional spotlight, and it is defensemen. We talked a lot about some of the upper-tier guys, specifically Brent Burns and how much that'll cost you. Ben, you've said before you don't necessarily like to pay up for defensemen unless it's a plum spot. Is there a plum spot tonight that you want to pay up for defense?
There is a plum spot, and it is Erik Karlsson against the Sabres. Since the deadline, Erik Karlsson, 7 points, 11 shots on goal, 8 blocks, 4 games. So that's roughly 6.4 fantasy points per game. He's going to be $1,000 less than Brent Burns, so you're obviously getting him at a value. Erik Karlsson, Norris Trophy winner. He's one of the best defensemen, if not the best defenseman in the league. For cash games, I think you have to lock him into your lineup. Again, against the Sabres. Second night of a back-to-back, you got Robin Lehner in net for them. They just got destroyed by the Flames at home, so they're a little shaken up. I think Karlsson you can easily stack at 6,200 with some of those guys we mentioned before. Matt Duchene, Mike Hoffman, they're all going to play on the power play. I like Karlsson.
All right, sounds good. Pete, what about you? Are you going a little bit more value, or you like to spend up tonight as well on defense?
I like the value tonight on D. I mean, Sami Vatanen, we talked about Taylor Hall's long streak with at least a point in 26 straight games. I mean, he's playing on the top power play unit, Sami Vatanen, for the Devils with Taylor Hall and Kyle Palmieri, who's been playing very well at home, very well overall since returning from injury. And Sami Vatanen over his past 10 games, 11 points, and he's got 27 shots. And he has that, just that category coverage and first power play unit usage that you covet from a low-priced defenseman at 4,500 or below. So 4,400, I'm taking Vatanen, and I'll spend up for my forwards on this busy slate.
All right, sounds good. Before we get to our stacks, just a couple of quick minor news notes. Jonathan Quick likely to start for the Kings tonight against the Capitals. Not obviously anything that blows us away, just got a little bit more information there regarding him. And then Matthew Perreault also is out there for the pregame skate for the Jets. He was battling the flu a little bit. Sounds like he's out there. No word yet on the line rushes there, though, to find out exactly who's filling in for Mark Scheifele. We kind of have our assumptions, though, like we touched on a little bit earlier. Let's get to our stacks, though. A vital part of the game in terms of the fantasy game, whether you're looking to stack a line of forwards or maybe it's a power play, you're including a defenseman as well. Pete, we'll go back out to you to start it off. Who is your top stacking option for tonight?
Yeah, I mentioned I like Ottawa. I like that Stone Pajot stack. But if we're talking three guys, I would go with the Lightning. I mentioned Vasilevsky is my goalie to spend up for. And then I think if you take Tyler Johnson and JT Miller, Tyler Johnson in the mid 4,000 range, and JT Miller at 5,000. JT Miller's playing very well, a couple of multi-point games since the trade. They play together on the second power play unit, a very good one with Sergachev, some other top performers. And, of course, Tampa Bay is mixing up its lines. You could see Tyler Johnson either playing on the top line or the third line, but that second line is very good with JT Miller. So I'm all for getting the cheap exposure to the Lightning and then coupling it with spending up for Andrei Vasilevsky in the hopes that he gets the job done and does what he's supposed to do, get that shutout for you tonight.
Yeah, all in on the Bolts, Pete, tonight. He's looking to just pile on the Rangers a little bit there.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, Ben, before we get to you, real quick, we did get line rushes now for the Jets, and it's actually Matt Hendricks who will be stepping up on that second line with Kyle Connor and Blake Wheeler. Hendricks, $2,800, and now he's getting exposure to Kyle Connor and Blake Wheeler. Does that maybe change how you're approaching the Jets at all, or you just want to go on to your other stacks?
I mean, I wouldn't buy into it too much. Hendricks probably isn't going to play as much as you'd think out of a guy who's centering a line like that, so I wouldn't buy into it. But again, you have to take note of it. Hendricks, over his last 4 games, he's got 12 shots on goal, so you're getting a little bit of a decent floor there, and at $2,800, he's going to give you the flexibility to spend up. So I think you can consider him in GPPs, but I wouldn't buy too much into it.
Who are you stacking tonight, then?
I have the Bruins stack. Again, mentioned it a little bit before.
Boston.
Right. Brad Marchand, Riley Nash, David Pastrnak on that top line for the Bruins. They're essentially in playoff mode right now. A lot of must-win games. They get the Flyers on the second of a back-to-back, like we mentioned. Alex Lyon. They're going to be worn down. They just had to play the Penguins. I'm definitely taking advantage of the Bruins because obviously Nash, you got a great value play. Marchand's price is appealing, given his ceilings, $7,600. Marchand and Pastrnak are playing on the first power play. Philly ranks 29th in penalty killing. They've allowed 19 goals during their 4-game losing streak. You can expect a big game out of Marchand no matter what, and I think Nash and Pastrnak get involved too.
Take another stroll down narrative street here. We got Nick Backstrom playing in his 800th game tonight for the Capitals, going up against the Kings on the road. We already talked about Ovechkin, 2 goals away from 600, so a couple narratives there potentially to keep an eye on out in LA. We do have one question we want to get to, though. It's from Tricka Domini, friend of the show. I remember that name from last time. Good to see you back. Good to have people coming back, asking some questions. Appreciate that. He wants to know, or she, I guess I'm not really too sure there, St. Louis stack. Are we in on the Blues at all tonight? Pete, let's kick it out to you.
I don't like that matchup for the Blues. I mean, I was contemplating taking Martin Jones as my top goaltender. I have some faith in him in that matchup, and I just think that the Blues are trending in the wrong direction. Their lines are a little in flux after after the Stasny trade, and I'm just not super confident in anyone individually on that roster from a DFS standpoint tonight.
All right, Trick, don't run away too quickly. Ben, what do you think?
The Blues, they're not in a great spot, but you look at the prices of some of their top guys. Vladimir Tarasenko is $6,700. When are you ever going to get him at that price point? It's not going to happen most of the time. Ivan Barbashev, he's another guy, $3,200. He's centering that first line with Tarasenko. Braden Shen, he was hot to start the season, $5,500. So you have a lot of guys on the Blues who are lower priced, and they're going to go against the grain. You're not going to see a lot of lineups on the Blues. So I'd consider it in some big GPPs, but obviously don't go too crazy. But again, you're going to get some value there if they do pop.
Tarasenko in Tier 4 in Pick'em as well. Not a spot we're used to seeing old Vladdy Tarasenko. Closing down the show, though, now time for our Stick Tap segment. Each of us going to give a shout-out to someone in the hockey world for whatever reason, I guess. Ben, who are you tapping the stick for tonight?
So my ode goes out to Pierre Maguire. I'm going to do my best stick tap. We're going to do a stick tap to the youngster, Evgeny Svechnikov. He's making his season debut for the Red Wings. Good first rounder in 2015.
Doc, let me tell you about this guy.
Let me tell you about it. Svechnikov was a beast for the Cape Breton, Screaming Eagles, and Juniors. QMJHL, 2 seasons, at least 78 points. I think he's going to come up big in his debut, maybe make a little bit of a splash against the Golden Knights. He's skating with speedster Andreas Athanasiou. Great line. Again, a little bit of a revenge spot. They traded Tatar to open up Svechnikov in the roster. So I think, go after him. 2,500 value play.
You can't go wrong there. We weren't able to get the bald wig, Matt down the hair in time.
I couldn't get the glasses.
Pete, what about you for your stick tap?
Yeah, I'm just going with the perennial, underrated Evgeny Malkin for the Penguins. What more can you say about this guy? Since December 27th, he leads the NHL in scoring with 52 points. The next highest is Taylor Hall, who we mentioned has the 26-game point streak. He has 40, so there's a 12-point difference between number 1 and number 2. I just think that Malkin is so underrated. We all think of that, how he was excluded from the top 100 greatest players of all time. I mean, this guy just continues to cement himself among the fantasy elite, regardless of format, and certainly we're going to look at him differently. We always say, he misses 20 games or so a year because of injury, but certainly in season-long leagues, you're going to be looking at Evgeny Malkin very differently next season, and certainly for the rest of this season. And this hot streak for Malkin, he's doing it mostly away from Kessel. I know they still play together sometimes, and he's on the top power play unit anyway, but his line mates lately have been, guys like Carl Hagelin, Rust. I mean, this level of elite play with those type of line mates deserves plenty of recognition. And I don't think he's gotten that, from around the league.
Because he's not the kid. He's not Canadian.
Always in Crosby's shadow.
Those Russians. Quick question, Ben. I just want to kick it to you. That came through on the chat regarding Torrey Krug. He's 5,900. Talked a lot about this game already, but haven't brought up Krug, and he's got back-to-back double-digit DK point nights. And if you're new to hockey and DFS, that's big.
Doesn't happen often.
You don't, if you get 10 points from anyone, you're thrilled.
Yeah.
Krug had 10 2 games ago, 12.5 last game, and you like him at 59 tonight.
I do like him at 59. Again, I mentioned the Bruins' first line as a stack. If you want to go a little off the grid and maybe you're not so much on Riley Nash, you can shift to Torrey Krug with Marchand and Pasternak. So, again, McAvoy is out. Krug's pretty much picking up all the slack for the Bruins on defense on the offensive end. So I do like Krug as a sort of pivot play for that stack.
There you go. You had about 15 minutes now to slide him into your lineup if you choose to do so. It's going to do it here for our show. A reminder that Pre-Lock Live will be back at this same time and location tomorrow, but they'll be talking hoops instead of hockey. The NHL version with the good-looking guys. Pete, Ben, myself, we will continue to run every Thursday through the regular season. For Pete Jensen, for Ben Zwyman, I'm Alex Jankowski saying so long.